There's a weird thing about Scream. Everyone knows it, everyone quotes it, but almost nobody actually talks about what the movie is. Ask most people and you'll hear the same answers every time. It's a parody, it's meta, it makes fun of horror cliches. And yeah, on the surface, sure. I mean, there's a character listing the rules of a horror film. Ghostface is clumsy as hell, and everyone really does talk like they've spent their entire life in a blockbuster. So people go, Scream, oh yeah, that's the funny slasher, the one that mocks the tropes. And that's where the discussion usually ends. But here's the part that everyone gets wrong. Scream isn't just laughing at horror. Scream is celebrating it. The meta jokes aren't the foundation, the references aren't the punchline, and the movie isn't some ironic scary movie before scary movie. That's the distraction. Because when you actually sit with it and really watch it, you realize something. All that humor and self-awareness is just the outer shell, the misdirection, the magician's left hand. The real trick? Scream is a slasher film made by someone who knew exactly why the genre had stopped working and knew how to fix it. Wes Craven isn't mocking the slasher, he's reconstructing it. He's pulling the cliches apart piece by piece, showing you why they existed and then rebuilding them into something sharper, smarter, and actually terrifying again. So when people say, yeah, Scream, that funny horror movie, they're technically right, but they're missing the entire point. Because the genius of Scream isn't the meta commentary, it's the filmmaking underneath it, and that's the part that nobody talks about. So let's talk about it. If Scream isn't a parody, then what is it? The simplest answer? Scream is a reconstruction, a rebuilding of the slasher from the inside out. Wes Craven wasn't mocking horror, he was diagnosing it. Think about the year Scream came out, 1996. Slashers were done, the genre had collapsed under its own cliches, endless sequels, and villains who became mascots instead of threats. But instead of running from those cliches, Scream grabs every one of them and holds them up against the light. It tells you the rules, it shows you the tropes, it points at the patterns, and here's the trick. Scream uses that self-awareness to sharpen the horror, not soften it. The meta commentary isn't parody, it's a weapon, a tool, a way to rebuild tension whilst pretending to deflate it. Take Ghostface. At first glance, he's hilarious. He trips, he slips, he gets hit with doors. He looks like the least competent killer in the genre, but that's exactly what makes him scary. He's human, he's messy. He's not Michael Myers walking through bullets. He's just some guy with a knife. That grounded realism makes every stumble feel real, not silly. It makes every chase chaotic. It makes every hit look like it actually hurts. The humor isn't undercutting the fear, it's disguising it. This is a movie about horror movies, but it's not just pointing at the tropes. It's showing you why these tropes exist and how they can still work. Even the famous horror rules scene is misunderstood. People think it's a joke, a sarcastic nod to slasher logic, but the rules aren't punchlines. They're structure, they're setup, they're the architecture of a slasher laid out in plain sight, so Craven can rebuild it right in front of you. Scream doesn't break the rules, it follows them perfectly because it understands them perfectly. The movie isn't saying horror is stupid, it's saying horror works for a reason. Here's why, here's how, and here's how to make it good again. The meta commentary is a mask, a distraction, and behind it is one of the most tightly constructed slashers ever made. That is the part most people miss. They see the jokes and think it's a parody. They see the references and think mockery. They hear meta and assume that the movie isn't taking itself seriously. But Scream takes horror incredibly seriously, and it hides all of that seriousness under comedy on purpose. That's why the Drew Barrymore opening hits so hard, and it's worth stopping to look at why it works. On the surface it feels simple, a girl home alone, a phone call, a masked killer. It's every slasher setup you've ever seen. But Craven doesn't treat it like a cliche, he treats it like a ritual. He knows the audience recognizes the setup, he knows you think you know what's coming, so he uses that familiarity to trap you. The friendly phone call becomes unsettling, the playful quiz becomes threatening. The harmless shots of Casey making popcorn turn into countdown timers. The camera starts creeping instead of observing. It's all designed to slowly tighten the noose, and then Craven does something brilliant. He kills the biggest star in the movie in the first 10 minutes. This wasn't just surprising, it was genre defying. Drew Barrymore was the face of the marketing, the most recognizable actor in the cast, the final girl in everyone's mind, and Craven rips her out of the film immediately. It's not parody, it's a statement, a warning shot. Nobody is safe. Not even the people you expect to survive. It's Scream showing you exactly how well it understands the genre, and it's proving it's willing to break you with that knowledge. Scream isn't deconstructing horror, it's resurrecting it. When people talk about Scream being meta, they're usually talking about the obvious stuff. Characters referencing horror movies, pointing out cliches, Randy acting like a walking IMDb page. But that's not why Scream works. If Scream was just pointing at tropes, it would have aged like one of those TikToks where someone pauses the scene every 5 seconds to explain the joke. What makes it work is the meta elements are shot, edited, and performed like they matter in the world. Scream doesn't break tension, it weaponizes it. The smartest trick the film pulls is making the audience feel clever for noticing the references, whilst using those same references against the characters. Sydney rejects the final girl stereotype and still ends up in a final girl scenario. Randy explains the rules, and the movie bends those rules just enough that nobody feels safe. Casey knows the tropes, she gives the right answers, she's genre aware, and it still doesn't save her. It's self-aware, but not smug, clever but not safe, meta but still deadly serious. Craven isn't winking at the audience, he's smirking, because he knows we think we understand the game. And here's the part that everybody forgets. Scream is scary. Ghostface works because he's realistic. He doesn't move like an unstoppable icon. He moves like a person that really wants to kill you. And the violence in Scream feels uncomfortably close to real. It's loud, it's frantic, it's messy. The chase scenes aren't clean or choreographed. They're chaotic in the way that real danger is chaotic. Craven shoots fear like he remembers what it looks like. He never just uses a joke to kill tension. He never lets the meta commentary interrupt the scares. The film flips tones constantly, but it never loses control. One moment you're laughing at a joke about horror cliches. The next, Ghostface is sprinting full speed at someone, and suddenly the joke doesn't feel so funny. The comedy never cushions the blows. The cleverness never diffuses the fear. Everything is working towards the same goal. Keep the audience off balance. That's the genius of Scream. It understands horror deeply enough to poke fun at it and still be terrifying at the same time. So how did a movie this smart, this layered, and this technically precise end up being remembered as the funny slasher? Well, there are a few reasons. First, the meta stuff is the loudest. The jokes, the references, Randy shouting horror trivia, that's the stuff people remember. And because it's memorable, people assume it's the film's whole identity. Second, Scream was copied badly. After Scream blew up, studios churned out imitations that copied the surface jokes, but none of the craftsmanship. People forget that this film was made by Wes Craven, the guy that built the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise, reinvented slashers, and understood horror better than almost anyone. When people look back, they don't remember Scream. They remember the knockoffs. It's the same problem that the Blair Witch has. People remember the imitations more than they remember the original. And third, modern meta has poisoned the well. Today, meta is often used as a shield. Characters point out cliches so the movie doesn't have to fix them. Self-awareness becomes a loophole. We know it's bad, so it's fine. But Scream isn't embarrassed to be a slasher. It's proud of it. It loves horror. It respects the rules. It honors the cliches. And that sincerity gets lost when people think meta means not serious. People misunderstand Scream because they misremember the genre around it. At its core, Scream is a film about what horror used to be and what it could be again. It rebuilt the slasher after the genre collapsed under its own excess. It showed that the problem wasn't the tropes, it was the execution. And here's the beautiful irony. Scream isn't mocking the rules, it's using them better than the movies that created them. Craven and Kevin Williamson basically said, okay, if everyone knows the cliches, let's weaponize that. Expectation becomes tension, knowledge becomes vulnerability. Understanding the genre makes horror more effective, not less. Scream wasn't laughing at horror, it was challenging it to evolve. And honestly, most horror since then has been living in Scream's shadow, whether it realizes it or not. So when people say Scream's the meta one, Scream isn't that scary, Scream's basically a parody, they're not wrong, but they're definitely not right. Scream isn't just commentary, it's not just clever writing, it's not just references and jokes. It's a genuinely great horror film that uses meta as a tool, not a punchline. People remember the jokes, but they forget the tension. They remember the references, but they forget the craft. They remember the meta, but forget the meaning. Scream isn't funny instead of scary. It's funny because it understands fear, and that is why this movie is misunderstood. Not because people don't like it, not because it's overrated, but because most people only remember the parts that look like parody, and they miss the parts that make it a masterpiece. Scream doesn't mock horror. Scream repairs it, it elevates it. It's a movie that everyone gets wrong because it's smarter than its own reputation.